Aloha and welcome back to this live edition of the Ohana Packers Edition podcast. The podcast where two dudes from halfway across the world talk everything green and gold. I'm Mike, and with me is Iowa Joe. And Joe, the 2023 Packers are playoff bound. How are you doing tonight?
It's crazy to think that they're playoff bound. I know I'm pessimistic about it all because I my fear is that this will justify Joe Barry sticking around for some reason. So as much as it's nice to have the playoffs, it kind of sucks that this
I'm
streak
choosing to
could continue.
blissfully ignore that, but it is definitely in the back of my mind because, yeah, how can it not be? We'll get into that later. But like we said, the Packers are playoff bound. They're officially the seventh seed with the Rams beating the 49ers. So the Packers will go down to Jerry World to face old friend Mike McCarthy and his new team, the Dallas Cowboys. Well, not that new anymore, but not the Packers. So, first playoff game, I think, since the 2016 NFC divisional game. So, and or first game between these two since that game. And obviously, Jordan Love's first playoff appearance. So, big things on the horizon, but we'll just get into it. It was another great day on offense from Jordan Love. He played a near perfect game, save for one blemish, which was not even in the passing game. But yeah, he's above 80% completion percentage, got to that 300-yard mark that you were asking him to hit, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, complete control all day. I have it in my notes that he started off a little overhyped, but for the most part, settled in. And I mean, the offense didn't punt all day. So that says half the battle. Of course, when you look at the scoreboard and you see only 17 points, there's a different thing you throw your hands up in the air about. But as far as what we saw from Love, how'd you like what you saw, Joe?
A lot of good things. There were a couple of minor things that could have went really wrong. I mean, the miscommunication on the play with the wide receivers, where it was like, and Romo even called this out on the broadcast, where the receivers played it as a screen, and Jordan saw something and must not have communicated it like he had wanted to, or what, but it he took off running, and of course somebody fumbled, or it caused the fumble, hit the ball out of his hands. But that is what it is. And then the other one is the almost interception in the end zone. That one, I think that would have been a backbreaker, but it Heath made a hell of a play on it. There's no doubt about it. Heath made a hell of a play to knock that ball loose. Otherwise, I think that would have really slowed down momentum. But other than that, he looked damn good. He looked like a confident quarterback. He really, really stood in the pocket. I think he only got hit once outside of a couple of the runs that he tried to do. I think he took 1 sack, but I think he got hit another time after that. But, clean pocket. And for the most part, they did that weird thing where they were rotating offensive linemen again. So, but then it sounded like he lost a couple of his receivers during the game. Dobbs got hurt on his, should have probably been catch. And then Wicks kept getting, or not Wicks, Reed kept getting beat up. But overall, solid performance. What we got Dallas for the playoff game, so that'll be an interesting setup. But I don't think there's any more you could ask for out of Jordan Love today.
Yeah, big thing that you kind of pointed at is going to be health going into this game against Dallas. Looks like Green Bay got most of it lucky on offense, especially. Hopefully, Watson is ready to go next week. It would be really big to have him against Dallas. You really hope that Dobbs is back. It's promising enough that he was back on the sideline, but you never know with that, collapsed lung, whatever. It kind of sounded like why Cobb missed parts of that, most of that 2015 playoff game in Arizona. But otherwise, like you said, Jaden Reed had to go in and out, but I don't think he's going to feel good until about March. At this point, he's pretty beat up, and it's just the you talked about it in our preseason preview where a lot of these rookies, they're not men yet, kind of thing. They're not fully acclimated to the length of the NFL schedule. They don't have the full off-season strength and conditioning program. So Reed's going to be feeling it out the rest of this playoff, however long this playoff run goes. But it's just good to see that Love continues to get a better rapport with all of his receiving options. I mean, the throw he made to Dobbs, like you said, I would have loved to see Dobbs come up with that catch, but that is just a insane ball placement by Love to make that even a safe throw the way he did. Several other opportunities, including Wicks's first touchdown, the throw to Kraft to seal the game. You just saw, and then the big one that I kind of highlighted in the notes that he's missed that wheel route to whoever's run it this season. So to see him hit it against to Jaden Reed when the offense really needed it at that point after the Bears had scored to make it 14-9. So it was a big turning point in the game, and it was really great to see the offense continue to raise its level of play, really, and just to start to hit on more and more big play opportunities. So love to see it, pun intended. And like you said, the botched play that led to the fumble, I think he did communicate it, because if you watch Wicks and Heath, I think it was, Wicks and Reed on it, they both go to block, and Melton is the one who's supposed to run the quick out. It's that old McCarthy play, but whether he didn't hear it, didn't know it, that is one of those products of Melton being kind of new on the block. You don't know how many practice reps he's getting with Love and the first team offense. So obviously you don't want mental mistakes, but it's kind of understandable why at this point. And you got to credit the Bears for making the play they did. I'm not going to say the guy's name because he was pissing me off all game. We'll get into that later on. But I don't blame Love for it. I guess he could have tucked the ball away earlier, but the thing is, as I saw some people saying, get two hands on it, but he kind of had to stiff arm to cut inside of that defender. So the main thing is he had the ball high and tight. And if you get a helmet on the ball and you only have one arm on it, there's not much you can do with it. So, and I do think he kind of needed that off arm free to make sure he got the first down yardage. So I don't have too much to say about that one. It's just one of those, oh, damn it, most unfortunate kind of plays. And it definitely helped.
Again, he held it, as tight as he could in that one arm, like a running back would.
Yeah.
It was a freak play that the guy luckily got his helmet on the ball to pop it loose.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any more that he could actually have done in that position.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't have any quote unquote coaching points for that one. It's just one of those, sometimes you make the play and sometimes they do, and that's how that shit happens and stuff. So like I said, overall, I give it an A- to A game for Love. We're, like you said, we're nitpicking a little bit, but you can't blink too much when you throw for like an 84% completion percentage and you're averaging darn near 10 yards an attempt on everything. So great game from Love. Unlike the other guy a year ago, Love made just about every play you needed him to in this, win and you're in or lose and you're out game to end the season. And that's just, like you said, the most important thing for this season is Love's growth and development. And for him to get from starting against the Bears, the choppiness of the first month of the season, losing 4 in a row, battling our way back to 500, losing 2 games that they shouldn't have lost, one definitely against the Giants, and then putting it all together to get back above 500 when it matters most and get ourselves in the playoff. That was a great game from Love. And honestly, I think equally as impressive was Aaron Jones today. Jones is the only running back to compile any sort of stats that matter a damn. And he had another stellar game. There was a point where I think when he had about 90 yards, he was averaging 6 yards a carry again. So it's a little bit of a bummer. He didn't continue that streak of averaging 6 yards a pop, but did have his third straight 100-yard rushing game. This is the first time in his career that he's done that. Some people say it's because they don't give him the ball enough, but also you got to remember kind of where his 100-yard games have come up in the past and how the opponents have lined up for him. So it's just really good to see Jones, and just to see him healthy and explosive at this point in the season. I kind of have it in the notes here that, as much to everyone's chagrin, and we both agree that LaFleur probably takes it too far to the extreme at times, but this is honestly why you want Jones fresh at the end of the season, is so that he can be the guy that you're just. I know that part of it is circumstance because Dylan's not healthy and you don't necessarily trust the guys behind, and you gotta win this game tonight. But it's these kind of moments where, yeah, we've got to, as healthy as he's going to be, Aaron Jones, and you can turn around and hand him the ball 22 times in a must-win game. So, and I thought he looked explosive, and he ran with some power too. I think there was a play where he got kind of stacked up at the line of scrimmage, and he just pulled two Bears second-level defenders along with Andrew Billings along for like 3 more yards. And Romo even kind of alluded to it, where he was saying like a lot of his carries should be 2-yard gains, but he's ripping them into 5 to 10 plus yard runs. And he goes, that's just the difference of having a dynamic player like Aaron Jones. And that's why I have it here. He's under contract for next season, but honestly, I think you just sit down at the table with him and you see what you can do to kind of extend him out another couple years beyond that, because until you definitively find another guy, and even when you do, Jones can be your like change of pace guy and stuff. So
But
I think
no,
you keep
Mike,
him around
he's
as long as you
done.
can.
Remember, he's done. They need to cut him. He's done. I've said all along that there's got to be a way to keep Aaron Jones around, just because he is their playmaker. You've seen where the offense just goes downhill when Jones isn't out there. I really, and I know we'll do this later on after the playoff game and all that, but I really do believe Dylan will be gone. They will try to rework or keep away or have a way to keep Aaron Jones around, and then they'll draft somebody, maybe 1 or 2, or maybe like they did in the EQ MVS draft where they just take 3 of them and call it, see which one sticks out of it, or even back to the Jones Williams Mays draft where they just took 3 and see who sticks. But it's obvious that he needs a running mate, even though he can handle bulk loads for the most part. It is obvious he needs a running mate, and thank God it was not Patrick fucking Taylor. I'm so glad that the only time that I really saw him was there at the end when they were in victory formation. But I am kind of bummed about 2 things, especially when we learned that a couple of the injuries. One is we didn't see Emmanuel Wilson play at all, and 2, they inactivated Dubose even after using a call up on him. Now, I don't know how that works when it comes around to the playoffs, that if, he restarts his 3 call-ups, or he's pretty well still only got 2, which it doesn't matter because you're playing 1 game at a time. But I thought that was really weird that they went that route, especially since Christian Watson was inactive for today's game also. So I don't know what their thoughts were there, but it was obvious that they needed an extra guy just because of what we found out with Reed getting in and out of the lineup just because of injuries, Dobbs going out early after hitting the ground pretty hard. Musgrave had 1 series where he played, and that was just to get him 1 catch and so on. But some weird things that they did, but it worked for them where they at least got the win, and it's on to Dallas next week.
Yeah, so with regards to the call up, so I'll start with my thoughts on just the Dubose situation. So I think they kind of knew that Watson was less than a coin flip, so they kind of just assumed he was not going to make it. And I think they elevated Dubose so that they would have the option to use him if Wicks and or Reed were not able to go today. And once both guys checked out, I think that checked out medically and were able to go. That's why they kind of turned around and said Dubose. They said, okay, we'll just we had him, but it's, we don't have to have him today. And we kind of saw it bear out. You saw a lot of big personnel packages, like you said, Musgrave didn't get on the field too much, but you saw a lot of Kraft and Sims on the field together, Kraft and DeGuara together on the field together. So, and they did run 3 wide receiver sets as well. But even with Dobbs going out early, you still had, you still were able to rely on Heath, Melton, Wicks, and Reed. So you still had a lot of options out there. Do think it'll be interesting to see what they do this week, because, Watson is going to be I'm just considering him a game time decision, even if he does practice all week, because that's what it feels like it's been most of this time. And you have no idea what the extent of Dobbs' injury is. I know that if there's a chance he could play if it's collapsed lung, but you never know exactly how bad of an injury that's going to be. So they're going to take it cautious with him, obviously, but we'll see. And with regards to the elevations, it doesn't matter at this point. You have unlimited in the playoffs, so the count doesn't matter at this point. So no, I think they're going to view it as no harm, no foul. They hedged their bets, and it paid out in the right way that they wanted it to in the end. So, but yeah, otherwise, I thought that, I have it in the notes here. I thought the wide receivers and tight ends were a B plus or A minus to B plus. I really harsh on mental mistake stuff. So Melton missing the call on that third down that led to the fumble, Kraft not getting out of bounds at the end of the half. Those are GPA killers in my book. So you can't be making mental mistakes at this point in the season. Melton's been in the system for 2 years basically at this point, and Kraft obviously has been hanging out with Patrick Taylor too much during the week, so they need to get him away from Patrick Taylor, reassess, get him to relearn late half clock management situations. Make sure I understand wanting to make the big play, but just get out of bounds. Just get out of bounds and save some clock, because we saw it bite the team in the ass today. So
now everybody can see me screw up Mike. You can watch it in his face when I start posting this stuff. This is our first live stream, and you can see it in his face when things disrupt his speech. But
no.
Ben, what's happening, bud? Duke, yeah, it's good seeing you, man. But I agree, they just got to keep running the ball. The main thing is just health wise. I mean, if Aaron Jones can keep up the pace that he had today, that'll be great. Hopefully Dylan doesn't have to be out too long. I think it was more than just the thumb for him, though. Do you have the injury report up, Mike? Wasn't it like
he had a stinger too? Yeah. So
yeah. So hopefully that's nothing too major. But yeah, I agree. Keep the run game going. I think that's why they're keeping Kenyon Drake out on the practice squad. They were able to activate Emmanuel Wilson, so it's looking good for the run game.
And then the other side of you, like you said, AJ's probably not back next year. It is a bummer that he's probably never going to play in Lambeau as the home team on the home team again at this point. So that's definitely a bummer for AJ, because definitely had some good memories in Lambeau. But like you said earlier, this offense just looks so different. Even when AJ was having his good stretch of games, this offense just looks so much different with Jones as the running back. So, yep. And yeah, I forgot to mention that timeout, having to blow the timeout because Wicks was lined up in the wrong spot. Same thing. You're not a rookie at this point. You're a 1-year vet. You're at the end of a 17-game season. You can't be having those kind of mistakes. So you saw that a couple of times during the game where Love was still directing. He still looked like a traffic cop a little bit too much at times, but that's part of the mechanics of what happens when guys miss practices and miss games over the last month. But you want to see those kind of things ironed out, especially as this team is going on the road in the playoffs. But like I said, it's hard to, we're picking nits on the wide receiver room, but those mental mistakes have to be ironed out. To a unit that was just dominant, honestly, the O-line. And like you said, Joe, they had some movement up front, but it wasn't the usual tackle rotation. It was actually injury related. Zach Tom. Someone asked Zach Tom for a high five. We need to know if he has the Larry McCarron fingers at this point, because Tracy Wolfson was saying that he went off to get his fingers retaped on the first drive. So this is where it's an absolute luxury to have Yosh Nijman. Why I thought the talks about him getting traded earlier, between the end of preseason and the opening of the regular season, were absolutely stupid. I'm just not even gonna mince words on that. I thought it was a stupid notion. The only thing that would have made me even think about it is if you were offered a day 2 pick for Yosh. But you saw it all season. They needed him at times to supplant Rasheed Walker, and you absolutely needed it today when you had Zach Tom. They were trying to, I'm sure that they were, figuring out which finger do you tape together, which way, how do you want the finger tape to best support it and stuff like that. For those of you who haven't played, it makes a difference, and I'm talking as someone who's had to tape
It
things
does.
to catch the ball.
That one right there is crooked as hell because it got taped wrong. But
20 years later, my knuckles are finally not all fat and inflamed anymore, so my class ring fits again.
But they did it weird though, because not only were they rotating him in with Tom, but occasionally they were doing it on Walker too. It wasn't often, but every once in a while I would see him
drive or something. Yeah.
So but hey, whatever works for them. I think it kind of screwed up things a little bit because how do I want to put this? I think it threw off the rhythm, and I think that's why we didn't get as many points today. And I don't want to put that as the only reason. Don't get me wrong on that. But it seemed like there were times where the miscommunications happened a little bit more today, but it didn't happen to hurt the Packers like it had in the past. So it is what it is. But yeah, the offensive line held up pretty good. The one thing that I do have to say is that even the refs weren't that horrible today, because we really didn't start getting penalties until like midway through the third quarter. And then it just started, it wasn't what's the
There were
word
still
for it?
only
It
two
was
penalties called. There was only one called on each team, so
yeah.
yeah.
So and it really wasn't anything controversial. There's the word I was trying to think of. Controversial. So
they were swallowing their they were trying to get this game done in a quick time. I tweeted the joke that they obviously had reservations somewhere in Green Bay or Appleton, whatever area you want to say they're staying at. They definitely had reservations that they wanted to make, because they were not there. I won't bellyache about it too much now, but there was a lot of extracurriculars and stuff like that was happening that they were kind of just saying whatever to, but
at least they were letting them play.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the good part about it, is at least they were letting them play. But I want to go back to this that Duke said, because I just got to thinking about it. That wasn't the only mistake Wicks had either. He had a few different mistakes today. So like you pointed out earlier, that he's got to think of this now. He's a 1-year vet. He's got to start getting smart on that. I'm kind of iffy on I understand it, but it was still kind of iffy to me with the out of bounds and not out of bounds, and let the clock run, don't let the clock run catch he had, because he had no other way to make a move. He basically secured the catch and got his 2 feet and then got hit. So there was no real way to.
The way the rule is written, and why I hate it, and leads into why I hate it, is you're supposed to have, you're supposed to be gaining forward progress to stop the clock as you go out of bounds. They don't want offensive players to be able to, let's say you gain the first down by like 5 yards. They don't want you to be able to give up 3 of those yards to make sure you get out of bounds, kind of thing, right, and stuff. So, but then, as Packer fans, you look at it and we're all Leo DiCaprio pointing at the MVS play at the end of the Chiefs game. To me, I don't put that play on Devontae or Dontavion as much as I put it on Love. And honestly, I put it on LaFleur too, because you got to call a route that, you don't want to call. That was like a short comeback. So he's coming down at an angle back towards the line of scrimmage. Call like a speed out where he's running flat to the sideline And Love's got to get the ball out there. You want it more upfield so that he's not bananaing it back towards the line of scrimmage too. So like you said, Wicks is thinking we're trying to gain yards to help the field goal. So I don't buy into the he should have dropped it, because no, he's thinking I'm on the sideline. I got to get this, I'm buying us 5 extra yards kind of thing. So better throw, and honestly, like I said, better route combination from LaFleur solves that. So that one,
it does, but
like
it's
I said,
still yeah, I mean, like I said, I understand it 100%. Don't get me wrong; it could have done better. It could have been, but just the rule as it's stated with that kind of
it's
play
too
is
much.
hard
There's too
to.
much judgment. There's too much judgment, and I always say I hate any rule that puts judgment in the ref's hands, because,
Right.
like I said, you end up with plays like I do think this Wicks one was called correctly. Yes, I don't think there's anything Wicks could have done in that scenario, but that's kind of the whole point, is you're rewarding the defense for making an aggressive play on a pass catcher on the sideline. But at the same time, how many times have we seen that play where the guy is clearly going backwards, or you ain't getting forward progress if you're going perpendicular to the sideline, and they blow the thing dead and stuff. So that's the part that bugs me, is that the rule is written that it allows the refs to have any sort of, they have their perception of the play has determination on the outcome. And like I said, we'll talk about some perceptions that these refs were terrible at later on in this podcast. But just really good to see the O-line play this well today. They, we heard how we talked about it a little bit in our pregame show, how the Bears defense had been playing better, but our O-line was definitely the best O-line they faced since they started to go on their quote-unquote run. I think the only other good O-line they faced really was Cleveland's, and even Cleveland's missing a couple guys with injuries. So, yeah, they've been racking up their stats, and they were leading the league in rush defense, but I never really thought that was too real of a stat. Jones just goes like a whole yard and a half per carry over their allowed average, and single-handedly blows by their yards allowed per game. So just a great game from the O-line. You saw, like I said in the notes, Jenkins was just on his game tonight. You saw him blow a couple guys up on some whams and some pulls. Tucker Kraft was excellent as a blocker tonight. I thought he was really good in his reading his keys and identifying who he needed to attack. Romo pointed one of those out where they kind of optioned the defensive end, and it was up to Kraft to go and make the play on the linebacker that's trying to scrape over the top of the play. So you just love to see that kind of development from Kraft in that aspect of his game, because those are the kind of details that are going to make a big difference if Green Bay wants to win a game in Dallas next week. So just really good to see, the O-line started the season really well and then fell off a little bit in the middle due to injury, but it looks like they've gotten themselves back together. Obviously, it's still a really young group, but always good to see that unit trending upward as opposed to the opposite. And last point on the offense, I'm sure there's a lot of debate on how LaFleur handled the end of the half. For me, I saw some people defending that he let the clock run after the Kenny Clark sack. It's the whole, but if the Bears stop you, then they have time to go again. My whole thing with that is, what makes you think they're going to drive the field in less time when they haven't, they've had some success, but that's not their game. And your offense has absolutely chewed up and spat out the Bears defense the 2 times before that they've touched it. So I'm always for keeping more time on the clock than keeping timeouts when you're definitely going to get the ball back. That's just always my preference. And then, like I said, I didn't care for his play call on the final, the Wicks catch. And also, when Love almost throws an interception, just kick the ball after that. That's the universe telling you, just take the points or take the attempt at some points on the field goal. So that's my big thing with that one, is like, don't tempt fate. He tempted it and he got burnt, but only in the moment, and it didn't cost his team the game. So LaFleur's got to
Yeah,
be in the room, and he needs to be better next week if they want to have a chance next week.
for sure. And I mean, it goes either way. I'm. If he would have called the timeout, you would have had people complaining because he called the timeout. If he didn't call the timeout, you have people complaining he didn't call the timeout. It is what it is. I think he was hoping, and you could tell by his emotions there at the end of the half, that I think he thought with the way the offense was rolling, he was going to get points at the end, at the end of the half. So he wanted to keep as many timeouts as he could to drive down the field. So it is what it is, but hey. So I think we pretty much beat the offense to death. Maybe we should go ahead and move on to our least favorite thing to talk about.
So yeah, once again, the end result for the defense looks a lot better for the process. The Barry defenders, and they're out there. They're gonna point to, oh look, he held them under 200 yards of offense and only allowed field goals and 5 sacks and stuff. But what was happening in between those sacks when they passed the ball? Fields completes 11 of 16, so just under 75% of his passes. He has a 97.9 rating. I don't think he had a turnover worthy play on the night. None that stick out is like,
Yeah.
oh man, got away with one. Like,
Yeah.
So
there towards the end when he threw to with Komet in the end zone and it bounced off Carrington's arm.
That was probably the closest one. And even then, I tweeted it. I said, any quarterback with any sort of throwing touch uses the fact that Komet is 6'4". Fields is just like, I'm gonna just throw it as hard as I can.
Yeah.
So yeah, but what Ross Uglum says it all the time. How does this defense work? Your pass rush has to win. And 5 sacks aren't nothing. They definitely matter. And you saw some really good pass rush from all over the place. Lucas led off the night with a great win against Braxton Jones. He was in Fields' face all night. He had a couple other plays where he definitely
and in the run game.
Yeah, he forced handoffs on some zone reads by just really attacking Fields at the mesh point. And I thought he played a pretty good game tonight. I think there was one play where he kind of lost contain, but he's so athletic, he almost kind of got contained back after the fact. But otherwise, it was just another good, step in the development ladder for Lucas tonight. Carl Brooks continued an excellent rookie season for an interior defensive lineman. Devontae Wyatt, we saw him come in under control. I think it was funny because from the, they had the kind of spider cam broadcast view, and it looks like, okay, like he wins pretty instantly and gets a nice sack. But from the opposite end zone angle, that play looks funny because it looks like Wyatt kind of settles himself down for a step, and he kind of goes, okay, I'm gonna make sure he doesn't see me. And then when he sees that Fields has no clue that he's there, he's like, okay, I got it. he kind of just takes that explosive step and stuff. So
I got to give him credit. He can move too. I mean, he really on that sack, he really closed some ground in no time.
Yep.
So a big guy doing that. And Kenny got his fair share of it too.
Yeah, and Kenny had more pressures than just that one. I thought Rashawn and Preston were close to a bunch of sacks, but were held at bay, literally and figuratively, by the Bears' offensive tackles. But
Yeah.
And the one that the Bears definitely got away with, that everyone was yelling at Rashawn, but I think Quay kind of tipped it off too, is that they both saw the left tackle leave early, and of course they called it on Rashawn on that 4th and 5 play. But unfortunate, but good game from the pass rush. But my big bone to pick with Barry tonight is the fact that when Fields had time, who was the one guy you can't let beat you? DJ Moore. And yep. DJ Moore had too many plays where he was wide ass open in the middle of your defense. And, some people were kind of saying like, oh, the one where he catches the crosser and Quay is on him. there's nothing you can do about that. I beg to differ. That's, to me, that is the ultimate symbol that you're in a predictable situation. Everyone knows what you're going to do. That we're going to run a route combination that we know is going to isolate our best player on your not best cover guy, and we're going to win. And so, no, I don't buy that as an excuse at all. To me, that just reinforces the fact that Barry is so damn predictable when it matters most. And luckily, the Green Bay defense was able to shut that drive down and hold the Bears to a field goal. But to me, that's just inexcusable for the team's lone weapon to have a 33-yard reception on a, not a do or die down, but a big third down where he's just running away from underneath zone coverage basically at that point. So those are the details within the game that I'm like, yeah, he can't be back next year. Like I said, the window dressing looks great. Certain things that he did worked well. Quay was excellent as the spy man on Justin Fields tonight. You had that one play where Fields broke the pocket to his left, and I think he thought he had a clean running lane up the sideline, and then Quay just comes out of nowhere, and I think Fields gained like 2 yards or something like that. But you definitely saw him, like, he kind of puts his arm up like he's gonna throw, and then he's like, "Nah, I can run." And then you see Quay step into frame, and then Fields is kind of like, oh no, like, what do I do now? And so yeah, and then he had a good sack. He had another 2 or 3 good pressures tonight. So I really liked the game that Quay had today. I thought Devondre was moving a lot better than he has since way earlier in the season. So the couple weeks off looks like it did him well. And the DBs, I mean, this is one of those, it's hard to say because, like I said, there's one meal ticket you got to cover on this offense. And yeah, I know 4 for 64, that's not anything special, but to me, that's too much when who are the other options on this offense? So that's where I stand. How did you think the defense did tonight?
I can't disagree with you on much there. I thought the line was doing pretty good of eating up the Bears line, and obviously, they didn't have their starting center tonight, so that's going to be a thing that they're going to talk about for a while. Oh, well, they beat up our second stringer and whatever. But hey, it happens.
Made Tevin Jenkins look like a bust tonight. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. So it just, well, even Darnell Wright looked kind of sucky for what he was doing. Because, like you said, Rashawn got held a lot tonight that just didn't get called. But it is what it is.
That's what Bears fan. He was held at bay.
Yeah. So it just, I thought the secondary looked a little rough compared to what they should have been, but I don't know if that's scheme or if that's them not coexisting.
Yeah, as much as I want to bag on it, at the same time, you had, like, Herman kind of pointed it out where Valentine and Ballantyne were kind of alternating reps at certain points in the game. And then there is the caveat of, okay, yeah, they're trying to cover, but they all have it in the back of their mind that if you see this dude break the pocket, he's probably running it.
Yeah.
And you even saw a play, I think it was Lucas's sack where, was it Lucas's? I forget which, no, it wasn't Lucas's sack. I forget which, it was a play where Fields starts to break the pocket, and I think they tackled him for a short gain, but Valentine just drops his cover. He's just like, he broke the pocket. I don't need to cover anymore. I'm coming up in run support. So that to me says it all. And so they kind of showed the box in a box of like the different Packers DBs and who they were covering. And I was just like, that one made me laugh because I was like, Valentine knows the assignment. He knows who he's playing. And he kind of was just like, yeah, if he throws it over my head, so be it, whatever. But I kind of did appreciate the Valentine just saying, screw it, I'm going after him.
And I even thought Darnell was pretty good tonight, Savage, or today, or whatever you want to call it. He wasn't afraid to hit, and as you know, as I know, as everybody else knows, that was one of the big knocks of him coming out of college. And a lot of the stuff that we saw early on in his career, he didn't like to make a hit, but he was hitting pretty good.
The
I
stick he put on
am
Komet took Komet out of the game. It was a clean hit, and I don't
yeah.
think Komet came back in the game after that point.
So I am really surprised Jonathan Owens didn't get tossed because of that hit he put on Fields as he was going to the ground. I mean, I understand what I think it's Steratore for
Yeah,
CBS said that he Fields didn't quite go into full slide until Owens already started dropping the shoulder, and he didn't hit him in the head, he hit him in the shoulder. I understand all that, but we also know how conservative a lot of the officiating has been, and I could have saw that one being flagged, and I I don't know. It would
it
have
was
been the
definitely
luck.
close. And
Yeah,
Owen, you saw it on Owen's face where he kind of sat there like, oh, that was dumb. And then when I think he counted to 10 and he was like, oh, no one's booing about a flag. So, and then
yeah,
he like kind of gets up quickly and he's like, no, 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 nothing to see here. So
yeah.
it's, that was another
So
one. It was kind of funny to see how that one worked out. But yeah, I do think they, like you said, just how the league is calling that, I'm a little surprised nothing came of it.
so we'll hear that all week from Bears fans that Jonathan Owens tried to kill Justin Fields and got away with it. But other than that, yeah, everybody seemed to do well, but it's hard to
It's the Bears,
yeah, exactly. It's the
like
Bears. It's
Paul
hard
Noonan says on
to
as reporting as eligible all the time. It's the Bears. There's not much to learn from
right.
this one. You
The-
just better win, kind of thing.
and honestly, it's just surprising the Packers didn't put up more points with the way they were going down the field. But I'm happy they had sustained drives. They did get what they did. I know we'll talk about it here in a minute with Anders, but it just I, I can't knock anything on the defense per se. We knew
Yeah,
Moore was going to get what Moore was going to get. Now, should EQ have got his long ass catch or stuff like that? Probably not, but what are you going to do about it? There's not much you can do. What do we got? We got DJ Moore went 4 for 64, Komet went 3 for 41, EQ 1 for 18, Herbert 2 for 13, Scott 1 for 12, and Tunyon had nothing. So, I mean, it wasn't a horrible game. But we also know Justin Fields isn't a great quarterback. What do I keep calling him? A glorified running back. So it that's the one thing that I am surprised they didn't try to do more of was do some rollouts, some QB draws, some stuff like that. But I guess you could really see that they were trying to decide. You could tell with this game that they were trying to decide if Justin Fields was going to be their quarterback going forward because they put him in situations to that he would have to make decisions on, okay, am I going to throw it? Am I going to run it? Am I going to, this is the play where I got to roll out this way. You could see that that's what they were going for with him was, is this what we're going to, is this the guy we need going forward? Or do we need to look to the draft for somebody else?
yeah. It it. I'm not gonna like totally read into it, but it had the feel of like the coaching staff that knows that they've got another year kind of thing because you didn't just see like the total like, oh, the players know that the coaches are, they're kind of walking dead kind of thing and stuff, and at the same time they're kind of coaching it like, well, we don't want to let everything out of the bag because we need to have some stuff for next year. like
Yeah.
we want to knock the Packers out, but also we're not going to try super hard to knock the Packers out of the playoffs. So yeah, it had that kind of a weird feel to it from the Bears side, but whatever. We'll see you next year, Eberflus, and
Maybe.
hopefully we will not have. Hopefully we will not have one Joe Barry in tow. Hopefully they'll still have Justin Fields in tow next year. But
Well, I have to
on
say
to
one
special,
thing before we go on to special teams. I don't know what the hell Tony Romo and Jim Nance were drinking before the game, but you could tell that they were both toasted because they couldn't get guys' names right for nothing. They were calling Luke Getsy like Getsney. they even called the Packers the Bears like a handful of times, and it's just like, come on, what are you?
I don't get on the team names too much because I feel like every broadcaster do. But yeah, the Getsy one, I was like, what did he just call it?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
was like, what the hell's going on? But they were messing up all kinds of names all night, and then like I said, later in the game, it just seemed like every other call, it was they were calling the Packers the Bears, and but they weren't calling the Bears the Packers. It just kept, they would say like, oh well, the Bears are driving down the field, and it's Jordan Love leading the Packers offense. It's like, okay, guys, I understand you want to have a good time and everything, but let's lay off the booze until after the game, all right?
yep. So on to special teams, and it was not a great day for special teams overall. Anders missed that first field goal, and that one never had a chance. I don't think the snap was particularly off. He just yanked it to the left on that one.
I'm gonna say both sides misjudged the wind or the weather to start, because even what's
Oh
their
yeah,
kick name? Panero almost missed
Santos.
his.
Yeah,
Santos,
yeah,
yeah. He doinked it and it almost went. It almost missed it. So, but then they both came back and were nailing them throughout the rest of the game. So I'm going to say they
yeah,
both misjudged the weather at that point, or the wind was really kind of whipping there at that end of the end zone, because I think they both thought it happened at that end of the end zone for both of them. I think.
yeah.
I could be wrong.
So it wasn't a great game for Anders, but as we've said all year, bounced back, made his next three kick or the other three kicks he had in the game, and those were all important when you only score three times. So yeah, we want to see him make them all, but obviously that's not realistic. But the main thing is that he didn't
And
spiral
then
out of
if you caught a
afterward.
little bit of the Giants game, Mason doinked one or two of them again today.
Yeah,
So
yeah, no, no need to go back there. But Whelan could have just had the night on. I know he had to hold for kicks, but it's nice when you don't. It's a good game when you don't have to punt. That gets
yeah, did
into a
he
couple
even
other.
punt?
No, we didn't punt because
I didn't think so.
you had the missed field goal, you had the first touchdown, you had the end of the half shenanigans, you have touchdown, field goal, and then end of the game basically.
We
So
still have never seen him punt in inclement
yeah,
weather.
and uh, like the only way he would this season is if the Packers somehow end up playing the Eagles, basically at this point, because the playoff field is us at 7, the Rams at 6, the Eagles at 5, the Bucks are 4, Lions are 3, but they're a dome, and the Cowboys, but they're in Jerry World, so that's a dome, and then the 49ers are out in San Fran. So yeah, the only way is if that we play the Eagles in the NFC Championship game. That would be the only time he would have to kick in bad weather this season. So I know
So we can't
it is
tell
kind
if
of
we're good or not until next season.
funny how those kind of things work out. But hey, the main thing is he's been really good as a holder. Just like we said, he probably needs to go to the chiropractor after some of the shit Orzik has put him through this season. But
Yeah.
I appreciate that he has, we haven't botched the PAT or a field goal because Whelan couldn't get the snap down. He's actually had that part of the game down, pun intended, really well for the Packers. So that's a good sign. And I don't know what was up with the kickoff today. And that's something that needs to be reviewed going into next season because I know, we've talked about it where we know that they've kind of gone with the whole kicking it short, but usually Anders is getting it at least to the goal line or within, within a yard or two of the goal line. He was like outside the 5 on a couple of his kickoffs tonight. I felt like he was coming up really short. And then outside of it, the coverage was loose on the, I think the Bears started outside of the 30 on every kick return except for the one where Robert Rochelle got the nice hit on, he got the nice hit on Velas Jones Jr. But yeah, otherwise, not a great day for the special teams. We'll never know how much, Anders missing his first field goal affected LaFleur. Just, instead of LaFleur thinking, just kick the field goal and get into halftime, he's kind of like, we need more yards. And, that kind of leads to the Wicks play that ran the clock out. So it's one of those, you earmark it, hope not to see any missed kicks ding the Packers next week in Dallas. But hey, we made it through the first season of Anders as our kicker. What's that? 20. He is going to end up at, hold on, 6 missed kicks. He's going to be above 80%, I think.
Which is still better than what Mason did his rookie year.
Yeah, 27 out of 32. So yeah, just I think
his big
issue to like 81% or something like that.
Yeah, his big issue just has been the point afters. So
yeah,
if he can get that cleaned up, then I think we got a kicker going forward.
Yeah. And obviously,
but then again, we never really saw him kick in too much of inclement weather.
The closest one was that Giants game.
Well,
and that was more wind. That was more wind than it was, snow or anything like that. But
so, but today's was pretty bad. It was cold, and they were getting some snow in that, but whatever. We still, it wasn't like the snow bowls that we're used to seeing, or the torrential downpours or shit like that. But I'm still going to reserve judgment. Let them get another year, because we've said it. I've said it. You've said it. Most anybody who does any kind of draft stuff said it. You got a 3-year window with that. First year is learning the system. Second year is getting used to the system. And third year is when you really go over, is where you should take that next step into your career. So we'll see how that is going forward. I know we're going to do a preview, but do we want to do a real quick just predictions on what's going to happen before the Cowboys game?
Prediction in terms of
like who's out, who's in.
I think Watson will be back. I do think they kind of hedged their bets and thought, especially because Jalen Johnson was trending towards being out tonight. I think they expected that whoever they had left should be enough to beat the Bears. And, Watson practiced every day that he was expected to practice this week. So I think he's going to play. Dobbs is totally 50-50 because, like we said, we don't know what the medical is. He might be totally fine. I'm not an expert on punctured lungs or anything like that, but it sounds like it was a lot similar to that injury that Randall Cobb suffered in the 2015 Arizona game, and why he said he subsequently would never wear a mic again. And otherwise, Tom made it through the rest of the game. I don't think anyone else for the Packers made it out. The big ones to watch is I didn't see if he went back in, but I know Stephon Gilmore left the Cowboys game early. The upper seeds in the NFC got just fucked up today. Like you just had the Lions are just limping into the playoffs, and I saw
they got lucky with Laporta from the reports that I've been seeing.
Right, I saw that. I did see that Campbell said. Yeah, I did see that Campbell said it wasn't as bad as they thought it would be, but I saw a lot of Detroit fans, kind of questioning why are they doing. But it's like, hey, if Dallas somehow blows the game later on today, we're the 2 seed if we win. So the Lions had to try to go for the win there, but the Niners are sitting there up nice and pretty, and this Cowboys team, they've got a lot of explosive playmakers, but they do have trouble with physical run games, and if you can build off of that run game, and we'll see. I know that they've been missing Jonathan Hankins for a lot of the season, and that led to a lot of their run defensive issues. So, even if he is back for next week's game, I don't know how long he's been out for at this point. I think it's been like a month or something at this point. So
yeah, I couldn't tell you that.
You hope to see that the Packers are able to get movement in the ground game, because that would take a lot of the pressure off of Love. And nothing sexy. It's on this O-line again to just keep the Packers offense in favorable position. That's my biggest thing going into this week. How about you, Joe?
Injury wise, I would say Dylan's going to try making it back. I really do think that Emmanuel Wilson will be active. I think that they're going to have to, just like we were talking earlier with Duke's comment, that they're going to have to continue to just run the ball. So they're going to need like a three-headed monster just to get through. And again, I hate beating this dead horse, but it's not Patrick fucking Taylor that's going to be able to do it. Watson definitely has to play. I don't. This is the time of year that even if you're only 75 to 80%, you got to go out there and play, just because you're playing for your season life, as it were. So you got to go out and and who knows, maybe Gilmore is injured and won't play. So then you definitely got to get all your playmakers out there. It was good to see Musgrave at least get one play today. I didn't see him on any others, so I don't know if you saw anything else with him either. I know he had the one
No.
catch, but got to get him going. I mean, at least get him out there. I'm glad they got him the one today, because that at least helps out with, getting back into the feel of
Yeah.
playing. But the defense side, I still say they're going to have to make a call up of Jonathan Ford, just because to add that extra. Otherwise, this Dallas game is going to get out of hand quick. They're going to have to do everything on that front seven just to make sure that the secondary has any shot at stopping all the Cooks and
We're gonna
Lamb
be light in the
and
box. Like I
yeah.
guarantee you, we're gonna be light in the box come next week. So yeah, I don't have a lot of expectation on that. And I think that Pollard is healthy again for the Cowboys, so that's a big one for them and their run game. But yep, we're gonna find out a lot about this team over the week. Big practice updates that we'll keep track of ahead of the preview episode. But we'll kind of get into deeper into the weeds when we do the preview. But just our initial first thoughts. Good idea on that one, Joe. Sticking with today's game though, who's your MVP for the night?
I could go for the bias one. I could go for the easy one, or I could go for an obscure one. And I've been thinking about this over and over again, how I wanted to go. So I haven't been able to do it all season. So I'm just going to go with the bias one. And I'm going to say Lucas Van Ness. He, as we were talking earlier, he really showed up. He was making plays. He got this hit on, he got a couple of hits on Fields. He got the one sack, and I think the other one was past the line of scrimmage. But he was a big factor in the run and pass defense. So I got to give it to him, because like I said, and to even go over his whole first season, he already put up more stats than what Rashawn did in his first year. So as a
Yep.
rotational guy that they're just kind of slowly bringing along, that's a big step. So like I said earlier with Anders, it's a 3-year thing. He's already getting acclimated in his first year. He's got to put it together in his second year, and his third year, you're hoping he's going to be, a stud. And by that time, you got to figure that probably Preston's going to be gone, whether it's retirement or, release. But the future's looking bright with him, so he gets my MVP for this year, or not this year, this game.
No, good pick. And I will
I
go
guess
with
you
the
could call
easy.
it. I guess you could call it this year, since this is our first episode of the new year.
I will go with the easy one. It's Jordan Love. Great game tonight. Like I said, had the one turnover worthy play and then the one blemish with the fumble, but I don't think there's too much he could do. The only way he avoids that fumble is he just gives up on the play. So excuse me. So like you said, you wanted to see him cross the 300-yard mark. He did that tonight. 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 84% completion percentage. Just a really nice game from Love all around and in control. LVP, who you got for tonight?
This one's a little bit harder, because there's no real answer, because they really weren't bad all the way around. I mean, I guess you got the cheap shot at Anders, but I really don't think that was all on him. I think they were misjudging the weather at that point. Maybe Bisaccia, just because, like you said, that the special teams just seemed to be kind of unprepared for this game. So I think maybe loosely call him the least valuable because I know he'd kick my ass if he ever heard me say this. So trust me, if I saw him coming down a dark alley, I'd probably scream and my fat ass would be running the other way. But uh, I probably got to give it to Bisaccia just because, again, kind of a year overlooked since it's our last regular season game. I I think it, even though there is some good that has come out of the special teams, Anders being more prepared than what we were thought he did, Whelan doing a tremendous job. Keyshawn kind of regressed a little bit, but I still think he was up there when it came to return yards. There has been some slow and steady good things coming out of the practice, or not practice squad, the special teams. Like there have been some guys stepping up, like Rochelle, Christian Welch has seemed to be pretty good. Uh, Benny Sapp, Benny Sapp has been looking pretty good on special teams. So there are some key cogs there that they can work with. I just think, like we've talked about all season, we got to stop going with the Bisaccia guys and bring in some actual special team aces.
Yeah. Mine is a little bit more, I don't want to say obvious, but my LVP for tonight is Tyreek Stevenson. Number 29 for the Bears, who just couldn't stop woofing in any Packers face that he could tonight. Had a couple just boneheaded plays. I'm sure that Bears fans will say that, oh, like he's our Jair, he has to talk to get himself hyped up and stuff, but he had a cavalcade of plays where you're kind of like, what the hell are you doing out there? He's the one he's the one that shoved Malik Heath's helmet off at one point, and then when Aaron Jones tried to get in there to break it up, he goes and shoves Jones back and gets in his face. He had a couple more plays where he's kind of like banging guys around after the whistle's blown, acting like I call it a fake tough guy kind of act where it's like, okay, like, and I have to admit, he's the one. He forced the fumble on Love. I do think he, as we said, he got a little lucky on that one. His head happened to be in the right place for once all night, other than up in the clouds or wherever the hell he was. I was waiting for someone to light his ass up all night. And I guess, in a way, Jaden Reed kind of did. I know it was cover 2, so technically it's not necessarily his responsibility, but he's the guy that Reed passes on the first level when he ran the wheel route on the Packers' final scoring drive. So, kind of got a little bit of his comeuppance. They did get kind of a good camera shot where he's kind of going like, "Where's the safety help?" But it is just one of those where as you're watching it, I'm like, do you know how stupid you look on tape? And like I said, I know that other teams' fans will say like, well, that's what Jair looks like and stuff. But I'm like, you're a rookie who hasn't proved shit yet in this league. I know you've had a nice season, but realistically,
3 years. 3
yep.
years.
So, we'll see you next year, Stevenson. Your name's on the list. But like we said, we'll do our preview later this week. But Packers are going to the playoffs, and we kind of went back and forth. I think 9-8 was both of our predicted record for the team this season.
No, I think I went like 11-5, but I'll go with 9-8.
None of us would have gotten the way they got here to this point. That's for damn sure.
Right. And to be honest, at the start of the season, I said that this team could be anywhere between 3-13 and 11-6. So this was, as I've said all season, this was a learning season no matter what. And the curve has come back, and now these guys are getting higher grades than what they were at the start of the season.
Yep. That's the most important thing that, I know you've been kind of banging that drum for the past few weeks. Miranda said it when she was on here that, yeah, the playoffs are cool and all, but the most important thing is, they're not like backing their way in, is that they earn it. And the good news is that, especially the offense has earned it. They've at times dragged the defense across the finish line. So you do love to see that as a fan of the Packers, that if it's going to be any one phase of the game, it's your offense that got the team here. So big development for the Packers. Love to see it. Joe, any last thoughts on tonight? Like you said, any first thoughts on the playoffs? Anything on your mind right now?
I'm going to be as pessimistic for the playoffs as I was tonight, that I just, for one, any prolonged run means that the percentage of Joe Barry coming back just keeps getting higher and higher. So, yeah, do whatever. I mean, maybe if they win the Super Bowl, they'll, Barry will just ride out on, the Super Bowl title or whatever. But I don't see that happening either. But honestly, the only other thing that I got to say before we sign off is just remember to keep following the Ohana Packers Twitter page. We are only 55 away from our first goal to give away our John Kuhn signed 8x10. So, keep passing that around, keep, retweeting, reposting, quoting, whatever you got to do. Let's get it to happen. We're so close. We're so close. So just keep doing that and keep checking out the website, because we've got more stuff coming up, especially with the draft season coming around.
Absolutely. So, yeah, please, as Joe said, as Joe has tweeted, make sure you're following not one of us, which is cool, but if you want to get the drawing started and be eligible for the drawing, you got to be following at Ohana_Packers, the show's Twitter account, not ours. Or, we may get to the thresholds, but you won't be eligible if you're only following one or both of us. So that's going to do it for us tonight, celebrating the Packers making it to another postseason. It's been just it's a tumultuous up and down, but ending on a high note regular season for the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love's first season as a starter has been nothing short of an superb success from any point of view you want to look at it. The Packers have their starting quarterback of the future. So that's going to do it for us tonight. Please make sure you follow the show to, like I said, enact the giveaway drawing at Ohana_Packers. You can also follow us. I'm at Kawano Mike. Joe is at Iowa_Joe86. Please go check out the website, ohanapackers.org. As Joe mentioned, we're going to have a lot more blog posts coming up in the coming weeks. Joey Van Zumeren just posted another good one about the Packers. He's going to be having more stuff as the off season comes along. As we get into our draft prep, we're also going to be starting to post more things on the website as well. Please follow the podcast on your favorite podcasting apps. Please give us a like and a subscribe if you're enjoying what you're hearing. Please do give us positive or negative comments and feedback. We appreciate all of it so that we can give you the content that you're looking for. The Packers are 9-8. They stamped their ticket to the playoffs. They will be facing the Cowboys in Jerry World. It is LaFleur against McCarthy. It is Love against Dak. I know none of these guys play each other on the field, but those are all the storylines, all the marbles. We wish you a go Pack Go and aloha.